More and more, I have people telling me that they're less interested in formal leadership roles. The pandemic has shifted priorities for some, and for others, the idea of overseeing other adults and the headaches that often come with that doesn't sound like an appealing one. My response, though? You're leading with or without a title. You're leading when you're mindful of it. You're leading when you're not mindful of it. Our words and our behaviors communicate to others whether we're thinking of the outcome and the impact or if we're not. Today, we will consider what this looks like, why it's important, and provide an on-ramp for our friends who are interested in formal managerial roles in the future. Hello and welcome to The Communicative Leader, hosted by me, Dr. Leah O'Million Hodges. My friends call me Dr. O. I'm a professor of communication and a leadership communication expert. On The Communicative Leader, we're working to make your work life what you want it to be. There's a saying in communication, or perhaps it's more of a sentiment, but anyway, here goes. One cannot not communicate. Yeah, the double negative, I get it. My grammatically minded friends, that kind of rubs me the wrong way too. But the heart of this idea is an important one. One cannot not communicate. Simply put, we are always in a state of communication. It's okay if you're shaking your head or rolling your eyes at me. Let's consider a few examples together. Let's say you are in an all-hands meeting and you haven't said a word. I am not communicating. Well, if you're in person or you're on camera, there's a lot that you're likely communicating. Are you leaning in? Are you taking notes? Are you nodding? Might be a cue to others, like your manager, that you're engaged. Are you distracted, looking at your phone, clearly multitasking with various apps or programs? Maybe not engaged, maybe overwhelmed with other role duties. You might also yawn, shift in your seat, touch your face, play with your hair, tug at your shirt, right? The list goes on and on. Signs that maybe you're bored, you're tired, maybe you're unsure or nervous or anxious about the content of the meeting. Okay, so maybe your camera is off. Did you post in the chat? Did you use those built-in emojis, right? The applause, the thumbs up, the heart sign. These can be indicators that you're engaged or you're not engaged. Maybe your light has gone red, right? So I know a lot of organizations, they have this light system attached to whether or not you're moving your mouse and using these programs. Green means you're active. Yellow means you've been away for a little bit. Red means you've been gone for a while. Perhaps others look and realize you've been away from the computer. Depending on the importance of the meeting, the culture of the organization, this might merit a mention from your manager. Another one where you might say, I'm not communicating, I'm sleeping. Even at bedtime, it can tell a child or a partner that you're tired and you're not available. Closing your eyes in the car, many walking by might think you have a headache or you're waiting for someone or it's been a hard day. At the very least, it would communicate to not disturb you unless absolutely necessary. Now, we're not going to go too in-depth here because we're talking about informal leadership and leadership emergence today. But the point I want to make is that just as we cannot not communicate, the same principle applies to our leadership here as well. But I'm not a formal leader, you say. Or nope, tried it and management is not for me. Or even, I don't need to try it. Trying to manage others is not something that I'm interested in. And all of this is fine, my friends. All good here. The thing, though, you are leading with or without a formal title. Boiled down to its simplest of forms, leadership means to influence. To influence. When we think of leadership in these terms, we can very, very clearly see how our communication behaviors become that yardstick, the way in which others measure or assess our leadership abilities. So today, I'd like us to think about informal leadership. That is when we're leading without a title. Then we're going to consider leadership emergence and how we can emerge as a leader in organizations and groups. And finally, we will end with some things that those who are interested or at least intrigued with the idea of considering formal leadership can do in order to demonstrate those skills. So to begin, let's define informal leadership, right? This feels like a good and important place to start. So in contrast to formal or titled leaders, informal leadership is when someone, regardless of title or rank, influences others through their communication and behaviors. So a few things I want to point out here before we go further. Again, no formal title or rank needed. You can be brand new in an organization just out of college, or you can be a seasoned veteran. No workplace needed here either. This can be in the community. This can be stopping to pick up some litter that you see in the parking lot, helping someone in need, or waving and saying hello, right? Displaying the behaviors that we want to see. Also, this is all about communication, our verbals and our nonverbals, what we say to others, but also how we treat them. Do we look at others in the eye? Do we stand with open body language? Are we telling them we have time, but with our body already pointed out the door? So, now that we know what formal leaders are, let's talk about what they do. How do you identify an informal leader? Well, who do you, and likely others, go to for advice, for direction, for feedback outside of your titled manager? Whose opinion do you seek, and whose support is often there for you when you need it? It's likely you're thinking about a certain colleague or a couple colleagues right now, right? You can picture them, those who you know you can trust and who also tend to be in the know. Not only are they our informal leaders, but they likely have a good amount of referent power. Yes, throwing another academic term at you, but again, I know you can handle it. And all we're saying when we're talking about referent power is you're pretty darn likable. You're pretty darn influential and inspirational as well. Referent power is pretty cool, my friends. This doesn't happen overnight, typically speaking, but what we're talking about here is your ability to inspire and influence others. This can be in any regard. Do you read a lot of books? Then you're the one that people go to for recommendations. Are you really good at fantasy sports? When it's time to drop or add players, others might reach out to you. We can be looked to for our abilities as a parent, as a cook, as a crafter, as a music connoisseur, as a peer, right? The list goes on and on. Later on the season, we're going to have an episode all about power, but referent power is essential to our discussion about informal leadership. And here's why. If you are a manager, you have formal power. You might be able to reward employees with bonuses or other incentives, or you might be able to use coercive or punishment power too. You write them up. You can put them on a performance plan. You can fire them. But just because you have the title doesn't mean that those you lead look to you as a source of inspiration or feel compelled to develop a strong interpersonal relationship with you either. So let's talk about the benefits of referent power. Individuals cultivate referent power through their strong interpersonal relationships, through their adept communication skills. Again, communication. When we are a teammate who connects well with others, we are in a position to foster additional support and trust within the team. Those with referent power tend to be excellent connectors. Why? Well, again, because of these social skills, they encourage and support others, and in getting to know these individuals, they can more easily make connections and suggestions because of their expansive network knowledge. Our referent leaders tend to earn others' respect by leading by example. They work hard, They tend to get involved in high stakes, more visible projects. And through their example, they tend to inspire others to heighten levels of engagement as well. What else? Because of their engagement and their vast networks, individuals with referent power tend to encourage greater collaboration and information sharing. If I haven't already made the compelling point of how important communication is, you are seeing it here. In sum, those who have referent power are leaders. They listen to others. They inspire and support others. They help to connect others, all while exemplifying engaged and productive work. So we know that referent power is pretty darn cool and really important. We also know that referent power is given without a title. So how do we earn it? Well, I want you to think about walking the walk and talking the good talk. And let me explain what I mean here. Do your work and do it well, but do it in a people-centered way. Think about the way that you talk to others who are inside the organization and those who are outside of the organization. This makes me think about a conversation I had with a mechanic a couple of years ago. I had asked a question about a recommendation he had made, and then he began talking to me in this really condescending, childish voice. I let him finish, and then I told him that I never would have made him feel like that in my classroom. And then I spoke with the manager to get the answer I was still seeking. Shockingly, it didn't come across in an over-exaggerated, chiding baby voice the mechanic had used. So why do I share this example? The employee was an expert in his area. He had expertise that I will never, ever, ever have. However, the way in which he engaged with others was, lacking. This colored the way that I saw the shop as a customer. Even if I were a peer, I would know likely to go to this person if I had a technical question, but likely little else. So we're walking the walk and we're talking the good talk. Model those behaviors you want to see. If you value kindness, if you value ingenuity, if you value collaboration, by modeling those, you can inspire that behavior for others as well. I also want you to think about how you can teach or mentor others. We talk a lot about this on The Communicative Leader, sharing your skills, your knowledge, your techniques, your insight, and your expertise. Why? Well, this is a path to empowerment. It's part and parcel with mentoring, and it helps to keep imposter syndrome at bay. And it's also a clear way to show your leadership skills. You don't need a formal title to do this, and it can be as little as sharing important articles or insights with your team via email, or leading a lunch and learn, or asking for 5 minutes at the end of a team meeting to share a new discovery. You can do this formally, and again, without a formal leadership title. If we think about mentoring, we can do that formally. Many organizations have programs where you can apply or volunteer for this role. Are you in a smaller organization? There are sites out there that provide specific steps for how to start a mentoring program. What's an easier, less formalized way of developing your referent power? Focus on your communication, especially those interpersonal skills. Investing the time to develop individual relationships with each colleague, especially at that peer level, it is a surefire way of earning that referent power. So I want to tell you another communication saying, and this is specific to leadership communication. So Gail Fairhurst, she's a premier leadership communication scholar, and she reminds us that leadership is in the eye of the beholder. Such a simple saying, but one that packs a lot of punch. She didn't tell us that leadership is wrapped up in a role or a title or one specific person. Nope, it's in the eye of the beholder. What does that mean? We, us, the audience, the followers, we get to decide who we see as a leader. This does not mean to disrespect or discredit formal leaders, not by any means. but rather, again, we don't need a title to act as a leader or to be seen as a leader. So let's unpack this. We know that leadership is communicative in nature. Again, I'm getting academic on you. Geez, sorry, friends. But leadership would not exist without communication. There we go, right? And since leadership is a communicative and relational endeavor, those who communicate clearly and with respect and take an other-oriented, meaning-centered approach are likely to be perceived as leaders regardless of title. We also know that peers serve as a unique source of social support, of inspiration, mentoring through their communication and their referent power. Why? Well, one very pragmatic reason. Peers are often easier to approach than leaders are. There's less social cost, right? It is easier to ask a peer, I'm doing air quotes here, my friend, a dumb question, or ask them to remind you of a process that you keep forgetting than approaching your leader again and again, right? So, considering the special role that peers play in the work group and in these organizational settings, it allows career-minded employees the opportunity to consider how to grow their leadership abilities. Some have even suggested that if organizations value job satisfaction, commitment, and reduced turnover, peer mentoring functions are of the utmost importance, right? This is really important, folks. This brings us to some really fun and interesting research I conducted with Crystal Ackerman. Crystal was interested in creativity in groups and teams, so we collected data from employees in the video game industry. What did we find? Employees cited their peers as their greatest sources of innovation and creativity in the workplace. Sure, their leaders could be and often were sources of support, but it was their peers that played the most pivotal role in shaping the workplace experience and encouraging creative output. It was often through informal chats with peers over coffee, in doorways, during shared lunch breaks, that employees reported as spurring the most creative stimulation. Formal leaders out there, this is a really good reminder to create space for peer relationships to develop. Whether it's something like bringing in coffee and donuts or luncheon or sending the team out for team building, or as simple as giving them some space to chat in a coffee area or over a water cooler, linger in the lunchroom for a few minutes. It's not often just idle chatter. So what do we know? We know that we don't need a title to lead and that it is through thoughtful, personalized, respectful communication paired with our expertise when we are often leading. When we are intentionally leading, again, no title or formal role needed, we're building up our referent power, the power to cultivate, to show others they can trust us. And often that's when we become trusted, we become respected, we become a source of inspiration, and we're just generally well-liked. In a moment, we're going to consider emergent leadership. This is the formal process of being seen as a leader. And we're also going to talk about what you can do if you don't want to be seen as the leader. But before we go there, I think we should talk about boundary spanning. So boundary spanners in many ways embody referent power, but also the idea of self-leadership. Again, no title needed here to communicate with intention and respect and impact. Boundary spanners are individuals who link different groups within or outside an organization. It helps to centralize information, build an appreciation of other groups, and it enhances your value as an employee. It enhances your social capital because of that linking function that you serve and the scope of the relationships that you begin to develop. So what does boundary spanning look like? Let's start with a focal employee. Olivia. She works in a large hospital in their marketing department. As a member of the marketing department, Olivia already interacts with a wide variety of employees at all levels. For example, she's already leading marketing efforts for the hospital's orthopedics, obstetrics and gynecology, and palliative care units. Additionally, when the hospital forms a project group for emergency preparedness and needs a marketing representative, Olivia joins. Someone who is dedicated to employee engagement, Olivia volunteers for the employee recognition group. She also learned of a weekly yoga group that meets on site, and she signed up for this as well. Aside from living a very full life, Olivia is also serving essential roles in her organization, far above and beyond those for which she was hired. So beside fulfilling her marketing duties, she serves as a liaison formally and informally between the various groups she's a part of and the stakeholders she serves. When the marketing department has to make decisions about the emergency group or create flyers for an upcoming employee recognition event, they can defer to Olivia. As a member of these other groups, it's also likely she's going to get a quicker response than if the inquiry or the approval request were to come from a non-member. Boundary spanners act as the glue in connecting functions in the organizations. A lot of times they're referred to as unofficial PR ambassadors. What else? In lean times, when economic hardships lead to layoffs, being a boundary spanner can give you some insulation. Why? You have additional organizational knowledge and bring additional skills and connections to the team that others may not. In short, you might be seen as more valuable than peers who don't have the out-of-department connections and knowledge that you do. In boundary spanner roles or other groups where no formal leader is appointed presents the opportunity to emerge as a leader. Well, leadership emergence can be incredibly complex. Borman and colleagues gave us a model back in 1975 that is still helpful today. They talk about leadership emergence as a method of residues. What the heck does residue have to do with being seen as a leader? Well, put simply, leadership emergence is essentially about being the last person standing. I know, I make it sound incredibly glamorous, but let's keep going so I can better articulate this process. Initially, all group members have the opportunity to emerge as a leader. This might be in a community group, in an ad hoc project team, even in a brainstorming group during a team meeting. So we have all members eligible to emerge as a leader. Well, that is until they intentionally or inadvertently remove themselves from contention. Members who either fail to contribute to the group or offer outlandish suggestions, or who use exclusionary behavior or language are tacitly removed from the running. I say tacitly because we don't remove them from the group, but rather we go through this mental process of listening, observing, and realizing that they're not likely in a position to lead this group. After initial members become non-contenders, 2 or more camps tend to emerge. These usually include 2 leadership candidates and trusted lieutenants. Again, I know you can't see me, but my air quotes are in action. When we're thinking about trusted lieutenants, it's a group member who endorses and supports a particular leader. Once 1 or 2 candidates prove him, her, or themselves as the clear leader, all other members look to them for guidance and influence. If you want to emerge as the leader, be engaged in discussions. Help to moderate conversation. Practice active listening, and that's going to help you be viewed as one of those early contenders. But I think it is just as important to recognize that there are times when we don't have the interest, the time, or the energy to serve as the leader. In these cases, it is always best to be honest about your availability and your intentions. If members do not directly express their desire or inability to leave, what are some of the passive behaviors that we might see? Oh, friends, you're going to be nodding your heads when you hear this, because we've all seen these behaviors. Missing group meetings or coming late or leaving early, contributing very little or not at all to a discussion, physically attending a meeting, but paying more attention to your screens, whether it's your phone, a tablet, computer, than to group discussion, or indicating you're not an idea person, but you could help to carry out the group's plan. So in summary, if you don't want to lead the group, again, this can be talking about a one-time informal group task with thinking of new clients, or it can be a large, more time-consuming commitment. But what is best? Tell the group that you will be an active participant, but not in a position to lead at the moment. Why do we take that path? Well, if we're talking about our communication being a measure of our leadership ability, being direct but respectful seems a whole lot more preferable than hiding behind a screen and hoping our behavior will communicate this on our behalf. So we've talked about informal leadership, we've learned about the impact and the importance of referent power, and we've chatted about leadership emergence. Now I want to spend a few minutes talking about an on-ramp for our friends who are interested in a formal leadership role. So you're listening and you're like, yes, I get it. I'm always leading no matter what, but I also want to earn that title. Yes, I've got you. So the way I want us to think about demonstrating your leadership communication skills in a way that may help you earn a formal position is by problem solving. Problem solving, you say? And yes, problem solving, I say. Oftentimes, individuals are hired to solve team health issues. Is that what the job description says? Heck no. But the reason the role may be open is because the health of the team has led to a slew of other issues. Maybe their performance in nature, maybe their production issues, maybe culture issues. Maybe they don't embody the mission or vision of the larger organization. Maybe it's more localized. It's hard group to work in because of the way they've come to treat each other or via their communication. But whatever the symptoms, often the root is poor team health. So we're going to chat about 4 common threats to team health, and we're also going to chat about how this information can help you to land that formal title. So common threats to team health. Threat number 1, interpersonal communication. This might be a lack of trust, crummy collaboration, conflict avoidance, or poor conflict resolution. Threat 2, these are structural in nature. We're talking minimal team contact, perhaps a poor reporting structure, or no or limited feedback loops. Threat 3, work demands. This could be the sheer volume, maybe it's the hours, or maybe it's the lack of support. The final threat we're going to look at is leadership and culture. This might be a poorly articulated mission or values and expectations. We might underestimate process or underestimate the importance of relationships. It can be a lack of role clarity, lack of recognition for team members' contributions. So now we have an idea of threats to team health. Again, what I want you to hear is threats to team functioning. Now we can problem solve, and through our problem solving, we are demonstrating our formal leadership abilities. If you're already in the organization you want to formally lead within, then it can be actively finding ways to either remedy these threats if they're currently occurring, or consider safeguards to put into place so that your team doesn't fall victim to them. For example, it can be as simple as using intentional language in meetings. Thinking about threat number 1, interpersonal communication. If we're part of a team that actively avoids conflict, which can then impact our ability to collaborate and forge trusting relationships, it can be as simple as being the one in the team meeting to say, hey, can we pause for a minute? It might be just me, but it doesn't seem like we've reached a resolution on that decision. And I would appreciate it if we could talk about the proposal for a few more minutes, especially about part A and B before we move on. So in a moment, we're going to talk about what's going on here in this example. But my friends who are interviewing for formal leadership positions, either in different departments or in different organizations, I also want you thinking about these threats to team health and proactively offering suggestions during the interview process. Talk to them about what these threats are. Talk to them that oftentimes we're trying to fix the symptom rather than the root issue. That is what hiring managers are seeking to hear because that's what they're trying to fix. So now let's circle back to what was going on in that example. Well, keep in mind that new communication patterns aren't formed overnight. But if we commit to raising questions or seeking additional discussion or clarification, it can help the group as a whole warm to the idea of embracing different options and working through them productively as a whole. A few things if you're considering this route. Always use I language. Again, this is something that we've talked about on the Communicative Leader in the past. It is important with I language. We are not placing blame. We're not pointing fingers. We're clarifying where we are, right? I'm unsure of the final outcome of this discussion and how we're feeling. I'm feeling like a little extra discussion would help me to better understand parts A and B. So we're using I language. I also want you to be specific. Again, I used A and B as placeholders, but name a particular element to engage in discussion about. Does the whole thing just feel like a cluster? Because yeah, that happens, but name what you see to be a productive starting point then. I also want you to use intentional and inclusive language by reminding the team of shared interests, whether it is the success of a project or your commitment to a set of stakeholders. This is a helpful way of using language to promote community. We're working so hard. We have been inundated lately. We've been racking up a lot of wins lately. Remind people of what you're doing as a unit to meet a larger goal. And acknowledge those who are doing great work. We don't need to wait around for a manager to offer accolades. Has a peer just been nailing it? Tell them. Did someone write a really great proposal? Make sure that they know. Recognizing and acknowledging people for what they do goes a long way in forming trusting relationships, in modeling pro-social behavior, in shaping the culture or how it feels to work in a group, and in developing that referent leadership power we've been talking about. These steps might seem small, but I'd like you to think of them as small but mighty. They pack a lot of punch. Why? When you communicate in ways that show others that you notice them, that you respect them, that you admire the work that they do, that you see them, this is transformative. Why? Well, that's a workplace I want to work in. I imagine it's one that you might like too. Modeling these positive behaviors is a way of illustrating your communication and leadership abilities to others. So today I am grouping our formal leader and our follower takeaway together. It just makes sense considering our topic. There are opportunities for members to engage in informal leadership in every organization. Leaders out there, I hear you. It can be challenging to let go of the idea that you need to be in charge of everything and all things all at once. But research and just common sense shows us that sharing responsibility, providing opportunities, allowing employees to lead in certain situations can help make teams more effective. Encouraging an employee to help others can give them a sense of empowerment and build connection within the organization. And your communication focus this week? Pick one of the problem-solving tools we chatted about to engage in. I'm going to remind you, always using the I language, right? When discussing something that's potentially heated or simply stating your feelings, we are diffusing or at the very least accepting responsibility for our feelings alone. We're being specific. We're going to narrow in on one specific point or idea or part of the process. When we try to tackle too much at once, we tend to not really accomplish much of anything. Use intentional, inclusive language. This can be integrating more language like we, are, and us. Or it can be more mindful of your word choice. Think starting a meeting with, all right, team, let's dive in, instead of, okay, guys, time to get started. Small but important. Finally, acknowledge. We've talked about see it, say it before. This is in line with that practice. It is important that we recognize people as individuals and the unique contributions that they make in the organization. I remember hearing a poll that showed that hospital janitorial staff were among the happiest of employee groups. Why? They knew the work they did had a direct impact on everyone around them. It helped patients to feel better knowing they were in a clean space. It allowed clinicians to focus on their work. The role that they played in the functioning of the organization is an essential one, and they were acknowledged for it and felt a lot of pride as a result. Next week on The Communicative Leader, we will have a psychological safety expert and founder of Zarango on with us. We chat about how being mindful of psychological safety can lead to innovative and successful leaders, teams, and organizations. All right, my friends, that wraps up our conversation today. Until next time, communicate with intention and lead with purpose. I'm looking forward to chatting with you again soon on The Communicative Leader.